We'll be referencing a lot of links and additional resources throughout the slides that we won't necessarily be going through, but we will be sending the Google Slides to everyone at the end of the presentation through the email that you provided. And I am Megan Vidaris. I am the Manoa Testing Center Coordinator staff. I'm mostly working from home, but for today I'm here. And then I'm also highly supported by my two graduate assistants, and I'll have them introduce themselves.
I'm Chioko Noe. I'm one of the graduate assistants that will be working with Manoa Testing Center.
My name is Sarah Sweeney, and I'm also the other graduate coordinator, and I just joined the team, so I'm a new hire.
So some of the things we'll be talking about today are the pre-exam items in section 1. Then we're going to go into section 2, talking about the day of exam items. And then section 3, we're going to be talking about some of the services offered by our Manoa Testing Center. And lastly, we'll wrap it up with some questions, and then that would be through the chat feature as well.
So jumping right into our presentation, our first pre-exam item is the Honor Pledge. The Honor Pledge is an agreement between the instructor and each student. A photo ID signature will be needed. 2 examples we provided are on the top right and the bottom left. The Honor Pledge is up to each professor what they want to put in the content. You can add stuff about the student conduct code, and you can tailor it to your individual needs. There are some statements that we highly recommend adding to your individual honor pledges. And one is, I certify that my Dropbox photo ID attachment is equivalent to my electronic signature. I verify that all of my personal information besides my full name and photo are hidden. And I certify this photo electronic signature may be shared with other exam proctor or proctors in a way that does not violate my FERPA rights. So now that we went through the Honor Pledge, we have some information on how we recommend to collect, store, and share that information. So first, with collecting, we do recommend using Laulima's Dropbox function to collect students' IDs. There's more information in the Dropbox link that you can go to at a later time. It gives you details on how to add the feature if it's not a part of your Laulima instructor account. And moving on to how to store this information when you get it, FERPA actually does approve the usage of G Suite sites such as My UH account drive folders to store students' personal information. So you can collect it through there and store it on a drive folder. And then if you're sharing the information with proctors, only proctors, in order to share with them, we do suggest using a My Google UH spreadsheet like the file share. It's linked, but it's also, there's an example right on the side. Pretty simple. On the left hand, you have the first and last name, and then on the right, you have their photo ID. So as the students are checking out, you can just Control find, Command find, F find to look up the student by their last name or first name. And then another pre-exam item, before or after you're done with the Honor Pledge, another item we have for you is the instructor testing orientation. This we recommend doing around 2 weeks before the first exam. And what it is basically you should utilize this setup during class. If you see the woman in the photo on the right, she does have a device that is projecting onto her while she's looking at her computer screen. We do realize not everyone's going to be able to do that, which is the important part of this testing orientation, is identifying the students that lack the capacity to take remote online exams, because you can offer them MPC alternatives, which are listed here: in-person synchronous exams, as well as find your own proctor option. We will be going into our services later in the PowerPoint, so we're not actually going to review those at the moment. And then going back up to the second bullet point that I skipped over, we actually do have a guide. If you click that later, it does have different things you should be going over with your students regarding the exam. Things such as what should they do if their Zoom just kicks them out for some reason, or if their internet goes out, like what's the hypothetical, what should they do? If they have a question, should they go through the proctor or should they go through the instructor? And just, it's a pretty inclusive list. There's a bunch of things in there that I should go through. And then just to talk about the photo, when you're proctoring, a proctor should always see and examine his head, eyes, torso, keyboard, monitor, and test aids if they're permitted. We do understand that it's not a foolproof system, but it is the best that we can offer at this point. And we do hope that we can amend this and like make it better as time progresses. We'll be learning more and changing things along the way.
Okay, so moving into creating a test day room for the Zoom. So I'm sure many of the instructors already know how to create Zoom rooms, but this process will help you expedite a lot of the process the day of the exam. So in order to do the breakout rooms, you would need to do go to your settings under your in your computer or desktop, and then enable the function before you create the room. So more on instructions on how to make the actual breakout room is in the link. If you need more instructions or help making an actual Zoom room, the link is on the Zoom meeting link. But this process is basically here so that the day of the exam, your students would automatically go to their individual breakout rooms, and then the proctors will already be able to go to their individual breakout rooms as well. This will save you time instead of having to create the room. The students will all enter, and then you would force them into individual breakout rooms, and then it would just basically you would see how many people are in each room, who's in each room. You would do it before the day of the test, and then they'll make it fast. And so going to the next slide, we're going to be talking about creating an exam on Lalima. Not too sure how familiar some of you professors are with this function, but there is, if you see on the picture, there's the overview on the left side, and then the grayed out part that says site info is where you would want to click. Once you go to that function, you can go to manage tools, and then from there all the way at the bottom, there is an option for tests and quizzes that you can enable. Once you enable this, you can create your exam by either going to tests and quizzes or assignments. But what we suggest is you using the question pool. And the question pool is just an option to basically pre-make your exam questions, and you can organize them by either subject, question type. There's also different types of questions that you can make: multiple choice, short answer, fill in the blank. There's an image dot one that you can make. This subject question pool basically lets you categorize or make different umbrellas for these questions, which will make it easier for you when you create the test. You can just pull these different questions from these different subpools. Okay.
Okay, so some different day of exam items. If you did follow the Zoom recommendations to make the pre-assigned Zoom rooms, then you'd only need to follow the first 2 points, which says logging instructors, proctors, and students logging into Zoom early so that they can get their camera placement situated and to address any issues that may arise. We do recognize some camera angles might not be the exact placement. So if students can log in early, we can really help them out through the chat. Be like, can you lift it higher, place it to the right a little, and whatnot. Another day of exam item is to change the chat settings so that the student may only message the host so that they're not messaging each other mid-exam. If you did not utilize the pre-assigned Zoom breakout rooms, that's okay. There's just some extra steps that we recommend. first, you'd still log on early with only the proctors at first, and then you'd elevate the proctor status to co-host, and then put them each in a breakout room. And then after everyone's in their breakout rooms, you'd admit the students. And then when you have almost everybody in, you can automatically move them into the breakout rooms where their hosts will already be. If any student has not consented to share their honor pledge information with additional proctors, we do recommend that keeping those specific people in the instructor's main room so that other people don't have to access their information. Okay, so we also have the proctor, what we're calling the proctor introduction. It's not quite a formal introduction. It's more so identifying themselves to the students. Like an example to the right would be what the proctor screen might look like. We do recommend not having the videos on so that it's easily identifiable, and the background being something plain such as this, and then their title being something such as Proctor 1. So they're already easily identifiable. But even after this, we still want the proctor to be like, I will be your proctor, and then they would explain these guidelines right at the start. If you're recording, the proctor would remind the students that the session will be recorded right at the start. They'd remind students of the hierarchy for questions. Some instructors might allow their TAs that are proctors to answer questions. So you'd really want to communicate with that. Almost always content related questions, like if there's a misformatted question, that should probably go to the instructor directly. And then reminding the students of the exam submission instructions. We do have a recommended exam submission guideline, which is actually the next slide. So I won't be going into that. But for here, just know that this is part of the it's day of exam, and I'm trying to tell, the host, I'm trying to tell the students everything up front. This is where it be done. Have the students open Laulima on an enlarged internet browser and no additional tabs, and then provide them with the password, and then they begin.
So the next one is the proctoring tips. We highly recommend giving clear instructions to the proctors regarding all situations or varying situations that might occur. So we have a link here for some items that we personally want if we're providing our own proctors, such as what do we do if we catch a student cheating, or what do we do if we think we catch a student cheating? Do you want us to stop their exam? Do you want us to just let them finish and notify you? Different things, or what if there's an emergency and the power goes out? Different things that might occur that we want to be ready for in the event. We also recommend using gallery mode just so that you can view all the participants. Additional screen, if you are letting students use other devices or other help, basically, if they're allowed to use calculators or such like that, we need to know just so that we know what to look out for. If they're allowed to use a dictionary and stuff like that, we know that they're allowed to have an extra tab or something. We are looking for shifty eyes or suspicious behaviors, but that also means that we need to know what you're allowing for students. And basically we have a list of additional information linked at the bottom for anything else that we recommend or that we need to know for proctoring.
Okay, so for submitting exams and checking identities, so hypothetically right now we're at the end of the exam and the student has completed their exam and they're trying to submit it. First, we should have the students initiate contact with the proctor when their exams are completed, because proctor might not notice. So they should initiate contact through the chat feature. And then the proctors from there would have the students face the camera directly at the end. And then you'd use that Google sheet of people's IDs to confirm IDs, and then send a message to the student saying that their identity has been confirmed. And then after their identity has been confirmed, you'd ask the student to grab their secondary device to show the confirmation message of submission. This point is actually really important because if you don't see the confirmation message and they just exit out of La Lima, they can, when they exit out of the Zoom, they can just open back up La Lima and continue the exam. So we do really want to see the confirmation message of the exam. And then after they show you that, then you can chat them and dismissing the student. To the right, we do have an example of what a submission confirmed message looks like. This is the default. We didn't edit it at all to say anything specific. So the default exam submission message would look like this, and that's what the instructor would be looking for. The proctor would be looking for at the end of the exam. And now we got that's kind of the overview of remote proctoring, to be able to remote proctor for instructors. Now we're going to segue into the Manoa Testing Center services. We do have 5 or 6 slides of the individual services. And in the slides, the way we lay it out is the first bullet point is always the individual service overview, followed by the eligibility requirements. Some of the eligibility requirements are the same for different services, but we did want to list them to be clear. And then the last item on the slide would be the process to request that individual service and or form link and follow-up information.
So the first service that we want to talk about is the proctor compensation proposed by instructors. What this service is MTC is providing compensation for instructor-found proctors who assist the instructor in proctoring their own exam. And this can be a prior TA or a trusted former student, but they must be a UH student in order to receive this compensation. The course that they're helping to proctor must be a UH Manoa online synchronous course. And the instructor and any course TAs must remote proctor their own breakout rooms. And then the ratio for the student to proctoree should be 1 proctor per 24 students. To request this service, we ask that instructors submit a form that we've linked in this PowerPoint or can be found on our website at least 1 week in advance to our UHM exam email. And compensation is dependent upon our funding.
So the next service that we have is requesting additional MTC proctors. If you do not have like a former TA or someone that you want to proctor your exam for you, you can ask for an MTC provided student additional remote online proctor. Some of the eligibility includes that the course must be a UH Manoa synchronous course. The instructor and any TAs must remote proctor their individual breakout rooms, and that ratio must meet the 1 to 24 that Shioko mentioned on the last slide. To request this service, eligible instructors must submit, this is a form to another link, a link to another form, at least 1 week before the exam to our email there. Upon confirmation of the MTC provided additional proctor, we will send a Google form of additional proctoring information for our student assistant remote proctors.
So our next service is a simultaneous in-person exam. This is for the students who lack the equipment required to remote proctor online. They may come instead to our facilities to take the exam in person simultaneously with the class. The eligibility requirements for this service includes that this class must be an online, UH Manoa online synchronous course. The student must be able to attend in person. We only offer this service for in-person exams. And facial cover must be worn by all times by the student. To request this service, the student must email both us and the instructor in the same thread at least 3 days in advance. And the email should include a description of the service requested, the course information, time and date of the exam. And both parties must be confirmed. So the instructor and MTC must confirm this in order for the service to be provided.
So our other option for students who lack access to equipment to remote online proctor is the find your own proctor option. This is if they lack equipment to remote online proctor and they cannot come for an in-person exam. Some of the eligibility requirements include they must be a UH Manoa online synchronous course, they must have been offered a remote online proctor option. They cannot only find their own proctor. If instructors wanted to use our form to do it on their own, that would be an option. But through our office, we do require that the instructor must have offered a remote online proctor option. The student must also be able to make both the instructor's online proctor. Oh, they can't. They must not be able to make the online proctor and this in-person option with us. To request this service, students may apply for Find Your Own Proctor option by filling out this other form and sending it to both uhexam@hawaii.edu as well as the instructor on the same email thread. The completed application should be sent in at least 1 week in advance, and both parties have to confirm. We do have Find Your Own Proctor requirements listed there. It is a fairly strict list. There's a bunch of occupations that the proposed proctor should have, like they should be a librarian or a UH staff or faculty or US Army or Marines or some one of those. There's a very strict list. So we're trying to do that so that we can weed out people trying to have their brothers or their mothers proctor for them, which obviously isn't the most ideal situations. And because of that, we will be conducting follow-up interviews with the proposed proctor. That's why we do ask for a week in advance. So we do ask for information such as their job websites, so we can see if they have any directory and whatnot, so we can follow up with their place of employment hypothetically, as well as the person themselves to see if there is any relation between them and the proctor. And that's it.
So our last service would be the in-person makeup exam. So instructors may be eligible for this service if the 3 or more students have missed the remote online option, if the course was a UH Manoa online synchronous course, and the instructor must have already offered the remote online option for the students that missed it. So if a student is unable to come into our MTC office for the in-person makeup exam, they must either coordinate something with their instructor, or the instructor would have to work something out basically with the student. It would no longer fall on MTC for our responsibilities. To request this service, eligible instructors can submit this different form to our email, again, at least 3 days before the makeup exam. And we highly suggest that teachers would give the students at least a 3-day minimum range to schedule this exam. Since the course is online synchronous, the students won't be able to use their class time to take this exam. They'd have to find time outside of class in order to take this exam, which is why we think a 3-day minimum date range should be sufficient enough for them to find time to take the exam. And I believe that concludes our presentation.
And so we just want to thank everyone for your time. We do have our contact information here. The general contact information is our primary method. We have a whole team checking our UH exam email, so that would be the recommended route. Our phone line that is listed we're actually establishing it right now, so you can take it down and make a note, but we won't have it completely set up for a few more days. And then our website is linked here. And That's it. We do have a time for questions or comments. We do ask that we utilize the chat. There is a speaker in here that makes, it echoes and it makes sound very weird. So we do ask if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat. Well, yep, but that concludes everything. So we'll just be keeping an eye out on our chat for a minute or two. If nobody has any questions, then that'll be it. Yeah. You happen to have any questions? You don't have to. Just-
When the students finish the exam, we like to do the confirmation and they have to show it to you. Is that within the breakout room so the other students see it as well?
No.
Okay.
Also, for that, the students, what the students do.
You can repeat the question.
Oh, so we had a question in person. It was when the students have finished their exam, do they have to show their submission basically to the breakout room is what you're asking?
Yeah, so it's like in front of everyone.
Yes, so technically, yes, but the individual students should not be looking at
It'll be
their,
on there.
Because
Right.
it's two different.
right, so you'll be
Cameras, right?
looking at your exam in your front screen, but your Zoom will be behind you.
Mhm.
So they would have to take their Zoom and show it to their computer.
Got it.
So you won't even be,
Yeah, they won't even be looking.
students
at
shouldn't even be looking at the
Okay.
Zoom unless they have a question for the proctor,
And they
which,
might bring it around.
right.
it. Got it. Okay.
Although there could be the potential, of students who have an external webcam. They're not using a laptop or an iPad, their movable camera is there, so they might technically have it, but we are recommending that no additional tabs be open. So it would be a minimized tab, ideally.
Oh.
Anybody online have any questions? If not, we're gonna wrap it up. Because it's been about a minute since we answered that question. If not, then we thank everyone for coming out today to it's our first day of services and our first presentation. We will be adding this to the website, both the slides as well as this recording. And we will be holding some more in the future. But it'll be pretty similar, although some content might change, it'll be pretty similar. But feel free to reach out to us at any of this information, and thank you so much for joining us. All right.